Hello and welcome to the latest podcast in a series of podcasts Ancon are running on passive fire protection. Today we have Niall again with us. We've been talked in the past, Niall, about the Building Safety Act. Mm-hmm. And it's been nice to be back in this facility once again to actually go through it. So last time you talked about the Building Safety Act, and within the Building Safety Act you mentioned about the golden thread, which I'd like to ask you to elaborate on a little bit for me today. And also I'd like to talk about competence, which is something that's very high on the agenda of the ASFP, and I think for our industry as well, really. So like we say, the Building Safety Act is well recognised. It's a significant development in terms of what's moving on since we've had the Hacker report that's actually came out. There's going to be a lot of information within it. Can you perhaps give us a bit of an insight to what the golden thread is all about?
In its essence, the golden thread, it comes out of the Hackett review of the building regulation system. She termed the thread, and it's a thread of information that goes from the design stage all the way through the construction process, procurement, construction, installation, and maintenance and running the building. At the design stage, it's the information that demonstrates compliance with the relevant regulations. And in construction, it's evident that the approved design, we've talked about earlier in the gateway stages, the approved design is being built. And if it's not being built, what is being built and how it has been assessed for compliance and reapproved as required. At completion, it's a comprehensive and accurate electronic record of the finished building for transfer to the accountable person, and in occupation, an accurate and up-to-date record of the asset as it is managed, maintained, repaired and refurbished. So no pressure then for the golden thread.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. So is that not in existence today?
Well, bits of it are. We have O&M manuals. We have something called Regulation 38, which you may or may not have.
I have heard of Regulation
38. I bet you would have heard of Regulation 38 because we've talked about it numerous times on the ASFP, but for the benefit of others, Regulation 38 is a regulation that says if you install a fire protection system, whether it's active or passive, you must pass all that information on to the building owner so that when they have a fire risk assessment done under the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order, bit of a mouthful, then that information there, so the fire risk assessor can come in and say, where's your compartment line? Which alarm have you fitted? What sprinklers have you fitted? Now we have Regulation 38, had that since 2005. I do regular polls of CPDs and say, who's heard of Regulation 38? And the answer is between 5% and 40%. 10 years or more, 15 years, nearly 20 years after it came out. So we call it the best kept secret in passive fire protection. But Regulation 38 is basically what someone has installed. It's not what was designed. It's not what was approved, and it's not how you maintain. So Regulation 38 is a section of the golden thread, but there are other sections before and after it. So it's quite a massive undertaking. Another section, while I'm think of it before I forget, is that there's lots of software available now for contractors to show what has been built. I won't mention names because of the product name, but the various recording software. That's another chunk of the golden thread. Yeah.
So this basically, the golden thread is linking all these together from from the start of this of design all the way through to actually recording of what's actually in a building and the information and how it's stored and all that.
That's exactly it. It's for a number of purposes. I mean, one of the purposes, obviously, so who decided what was in there and why, and if it was the wrong decision, why it's wrong. But at the moment, a lot of these decisions are not recorded adequately. At a more practical level, in the world of passive fire protection, we often get phoned up and say, I've got this looks like a plastery type material on some steelwork. What is it? Or I've got a reactive paint on some steelwork. What is it? And I need to make good some of it. How do I do it? Well, And they said, well, go and check the building regulations and check the regulation 38 for me. And there's nothing there.
When's this due to come in, Niall? Is it in place now?
There are regulations there's new guidance. Regulations are there. There's guidance that's due to come out imminently from DLUC on the golden thread.
And does this relate to new build or refurbishment or both?
It's both.
Okay, that's
it's
quite...
both. It's more of a problem for the older buildings because in many cases you don't know what's there.
So if I'm a contractor and I'm installing, I need to be aware of this then?
If you are a main contractor, absolutely. But if you are a installation contractor, you also be able to show what you're putting in. And that you're putting in is what was agreed, what's been approved, and have records of that. I think those records will go to the main contractor, and it will all be part of the golden thread. The golden thread is managed by the client. Okay. I always think that's a bit odd, actually. But the main responsibility for the golden thread is on the client. It's on there. They have to collate and submit it. They have to check the competence of those in the supply chain, and they submit the golden thread as part of Gateway 2 and Gateway 3 reviews.
And you're part of the ASFP, obviously. What part are they having to play in getting this message across and what it's all about?
There's a lot of talk about the golden thread. There's various documents and stuff that you look at. What we've identified in some of our various meetings is we produce a number of colour books on different types of passive fire protection, and they kind of tell you everything you need to know from a design and a manufacture process and so on. And what we've done is we set up, we're going to produce a new colour book called the Golden Book for Golden Thread. And what we've done is we've set all our task groups, the task group 1 for reactive coatings, task group 3 fire stopping, and task group 6 stuff. And then we send them, imagine a project and think about the information you need to pass on to various parties. Think about them, what is information provided and how is it shared? And we're asking all those task groups as a question. And we're preparing, therefore, checklists for each type of passive fire protection to go into the golden thread. And so we produce this code of practice. So anybody who's going to produce a bit of software, because they say it's not a license for software manufacturers, but it's got to be to some extent. It's got to be. They can say, right, while we're doing this, we need to introduce to include all these factors from all these different types of passive fire protection.
Within the Building Safety Act, the ASFP is developing a competency pathway. Can you explain what the pathway is, please, Niall?
Competency is one of these words that's been used endlessly and effortlessly over the last years, and it comes in partly as Dame Judith Hackett revealed in her report that the competency of many players in the construction industry, from designers right through to those managing, competency was not good enough, it was not there, it was not qualified, it was not regulated or whatever. And different players at different stages of the building construction, some of them are more regulated and more controlled than others. So as part of that, there's a desire to create what's called a competency pathway, and there was a industry response group which was formed from Construction Industry Council, Construction Products Association and Build UK, and they published a number of reports called Raising the Bar, Setting the Bar, and the latest one, A Higher Bar. And part of these is to ensure that the competency frameworks are being developed for all players in the construction process. There are publicly available specification, that's a kind of British standard, but the principal designer, principal contractor and the building safety manager. These are key statutory roles, duty holder roles under the Building Safety Act. So those framework standards have been published. But for everyone else, it's up to the industry to do. So they had 12 working groups developed in this, and we're very heavily involved in working group 2, which is contractors, not surprisingly, because that's our information. Now, one of the things about, we always seem to come back to fire stopping. What do you need to be a fire stopper? A white van, a mastic gun, and a bread knife. That's your requirements. That's all it has been. There's no requirements to have any qualifications or experience or etc. And elements of that and variations of that for other roles as well within the system. So we tend to talk about competence, and we tend to talk about this thing needs to change. We tend to talk about 4 things: skills, knowledge, experience, and behaviour, SCEB. And we need those 4 things, because you might be skillful, you might be experienced, and you might behave well, but if you don't have the underpinning knowledge, you're going to fail. And likewise, you pull any one of those things out, it's not going to work. So the articulation of competence in terms of skills, knowledge, experience, and behaviour has been replicated for every single role, from designers and architects right down through the building safety managers.
Okay.
And those form part of the competency framework for each of those individual groups. So I know this is a lot of groups and a lot of people. So the architects and REBA and all of them involved at the competency framework for architects and so on. And we're doing one for contractors. Contractors, of course, it's not just fire, it's everything in contractor. In terms of passive fire, we're doing fire stopping, we're doing ducts and dampers, we're doing fire resisting glazing, have a hand in fire resisting doors, which is the most of the passive fire protection, I think. There's also going to be a competence lead in passive fire protection as an umbrella, and we hope to get that. That's where we're going. So what does that mean? So first of all, you do is you have to identify the requirements. I have to be able to use this pen and fire stop this hole, and I have to demonstrate it once a year. So I need to know cutting skills and marking skills and so on. So that's your skills. The knowledge, I have to have some understanding of the building regulation. I have to do it once a year. That's my experience. And my behaviour, I have to demonstrate that I can work on my own, unsupervised, etc. That's a very simplistic example. Then after you've produced that, you have to consult with the industry to make sure it's not unrealistic, publish the requirements, and then individuals will record their competencies, etc.
I'd imagine there's different levels of competency as well.
There are. I missed that out, but yes, there's a foundation level right up to a kind of expert level.
Okay, because we'll find that, won't we, across the different trades and the different roles that people have to play within the contracting industry.
Well, in fire stopping, we've identified 35 different activities, because it's actually fire stopping is if you look at timber, if it's doors, you've got very crudely timber doors, metal doors, and composite doors. If you look at fire stopping, you've got like 15 different product groups. Yeah. There's a lot of overlap between them, and we're going to collaborate with them and assimilate them, collate them. That's the word for it. But there's different activities. So what we're doing is identifying requirements, consulting, and publishing those requirements. Once individuals, this is ongoing. Once individuals have done that, they record their competence against their requirements. We've also got to look at training recognition, because the ASFP isn't going to train everyone.
No.
And there's a lot of good training out there.
Yeah, but manufacturers, contractors, distributors alike can do all of that, can't they, as well?
And the early adopters would suggest some relevant training. So the idea is you have a framework of what you need to do, skills, knowledge, experience, behaviour, how it is recorded, how it interfaces with national standards.
That's quite a lot to take. That's a lot to take on board.
I've just done that. I chair the fire stopping specialist subgroup. Yeah, and we've had like 15 meetings over the last 2 years.
I know there's also one, Niall, on distribution and sales as well. So that's a group that's been looked at as well, as I understand. you, as the ASFP, are also introducing your pass mark for competence, which I've seen on posters plastered around in a few places, which is very impressive. Can you explain to you what this actually means and perhaps what it means to installers?
For ASFP members, to be a member of the ASFP, you have to have various checks on finances. It's a trade association, obviously, for manufacturers and contractors and so on. If you're a passive fire protection contractor, you have to have third-party installation certification. That's been the situation for 20 or 30 years.
Yes.
But when you look at a manufacturer, we kind of say, you just have to have third-party certificated product. The pass mark basically tightens up on that, and it creates a higher level, which takes into elements, and that's why I'll come back to Code for Construction Products Information in a minute. It attaches a higher level. A member company who can achieve it, it's voluntary at the moment. It's a mark that shows enhanced service and allows ASFP members to demonstrate their commitment to quality.
That must be a real positive to move forward, though, isn't it? Because people can then illustrate what they've done and how much knowledge they've got, and they put their people through it and recorded it in the right way, etc.
It will be saying we're not just a member of a trade association. Yes. So if I give you, for example, for manufacturers, all the products they've got to use have got to be third-party certificated. They've got to register all their relevant staff with the ASFP competency register that I mentioned earlier. They've got to be registered against the Code for Construction Product Information with CPIL as Construction Product Information. So in other words, manufacturers have got to be registered with CCPI. I'll just bear it. CCPI, Code for Construction Product Information, is a verification service, a registration service for manufacturers who want to produce supporting information. I'm not talking about test reports and assessment, but I'm talking about product for marketing information to show that it's honest, it's truthful, it doesn't miss anything out, it's not misleading, and so on and so forth.
Okay, that's
and that's very important. And again, that results from the Hackett report, where some manufacturers were a bit misleading or not active. So that's quite important. So we're picking up on that. We're picking up the CCPI. The manufacturer have to register their staff and be third-party certificated.
There's an awful lot of things within that are changing and actually coming in, but having been in this industry like you for a long time, I think they're for the positive. I think it's for the good. It will hopefully, for want of better words, tidy up a little bit of our industry.
It is. I mean, there's a lot of, when the Grenfell Tower fire happened, there's an awful lot of us in the fire industry said, well, we knew this was going to happen eventually. It would happen because it's the Wild West.
Yeah.
It was the Wild West out there, and it just has to change. Ireland, I always like to give the example of the Republic of Ireland. They had a situation, a building in Dublin called Priory Hall, and basically the passive fire protection in there was terrible and not. And because it was owned by Dublin City Corporation, they said, right, we're not going to have this. We don't like this. So they got the developer and seized his passport. They seized his assets.
Wow.
And they decanted everybody out of the building to remediate the building, which was remediated by the public purse. Now, I don't think we could do that with every building in Ireland or the UK.
Be nice, wouldn't it?
But it was a collective, we can't go on the way we're doing it, the way we have been doing it. Unfortunately, in this country, it took Grenfell Fire to do it. But that's, it's things have to change, and they will change.
There's been a lot of changes, Niall, and there's a lot of changes moving forward, which can only be a real positive here. I think the competency pathway is a real positive, which is what was needed, and it'll be really good that we're moving forward with that. And I really like the ASFP pass mark scheme as well. Let's hope people take it up and start using it, and our business will actually move forward. So, Niall, thanks again for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you for the opportunity.